From the very first film, Johnny stands out as the only human in a world populated by immortal monsters. This contrast introduces a compelling dynamic and raises a deeper question. While everyone around him is untouched by time, what will become of Johnny, whose humanity makes him vulnerable to aging and death? This underlying theme of mortality opens the door to a fascinating theory. What if Johnny somehow became immortal without even realizing it? Since his debut, Johnny has always been an outsider, a regular human who stumbled into the monster world by chance. He fell in love with Mavis, the daughter of the legendary Count Dracula. His cheerful personality and boundless energy eventually won over the monster community, but the fact that he is mortal has always cast a quiet shadow over his relationship with Mavis. While Mavis, Dracula, and the rest of their circle are shielded from time, immune to aging, illness, and natural death, Johnny remains bound to the limits of a human lifespan. This stark difference creates an unspoken tension in his life. As decades pass, the inevitability of aging looms only for him, highlighting the fragile nature of his existence compared to the timeless beings around him. The contrast between Johnny and the rest of his family brings up a harsh reality. Eventually, he will die and the others won't. This isn't just a distant possibility, it's a certainty that no one around him shares. Mavis, untouched by time, would continue living long after Johnny's life comes to an end. Their son, caught between two worlds, may grow up unsure whether his human side or his vampire heritage will define his future. And no matter how deeply he is loved by his family and friends, there's nothing any of them can do to prevent the outcome that comes with being human. No magical ability or supernatural strength can alter the fact that Johnny has an expiration date, unlike everyone else in his life. This quiet but powerful dilemma surfaces throughout the films, mostly during emotionally charged scenes between Johnny and Mavis. It lingers in the background, unspoken but undeniable. Johnny may laugh, travel, and face monsters with ease, but deep down, there's always a silent countdown ticking in the background. He is the only one who ages, the only one who will grow old and eventually disappear. Yet this is where the narrative takes a potential turn, a shift so subtle that it might have gone unnoticed. What if the path of mortality no longer applies to Johnny? In the fourth movie, Johnny is transformed into a monster, not just for comedic effect or temporary tension, but through a magical process that rewrote his biology entirely. Though he's eventually restored to his human self, the nature of such a transformation might not be fully reversible. The spell that altered him could have left a lasting trace, changing something deep within him, something invisible but permanent. It's never confirmed and no character explicitly mentions it, but the possibility remains. Johnny might no longer be just human. His body returned to its original shape, but what about his aging? What if that transformation interrupted his biological clock? What if, without knowing, Johnny crossed a threshold and became something new, something not bound by the normal limits of human life? In Hotel Transylvania, Transformania, the fourth installment of the franchise, something completely unexpected happens. Johnny is turned into a monster. Thanks to a device called the monsterification ray, he's transformed into a massive, powerful creature, complete with enhanced strength, endurance, and a full-on monster appearance. But beyond the chaos and comedic moments this brings, a deeper question arises. Could this transformation have had permanent consequences, like granting Johnny immortality? Let's break it down. Johnny wasn't just temporarily altered, he was fully converted into a monster, with all the traits that come with it. And while the effects of the transformation were supposedly reversed later, can we really be sure everything went back to the way it was? In a universe where magic is unpredictable and rarely follows logic, the idea that Johnny might still carry remnants of that transformation isn't far-fetched. He was the first human ever exposed to the monsterification ray. That alone introduces a huge margin for unexpected side effects. The magic involved in that transformation was unstable and untested on humans. Anything could have happened. It's possible that when Johnny turned back into a human, the process didn't fully undo what had been done. Maybe something remained, something subtle, something no one noticed. And what if that something is the very thing that altered his biology permanently, extending his life, slowing down his aging, or even rendering him immortal without his knowledge? The movie never addresses this directly, but the potential is there. Dracula never stops to test Johnny's condition. Mavis doesn't seem to question whether the transformation had any lingering effects. And Johnny himself? He's too excited about being back to normal to consider the possibility that he may not be entirely human anymore. In the world of Hotel Transylvania, where spells and monsters exist side by side, it's not a stretch to believe that Johnny's brush with magic changed him forever. He might look human again, but the truth is, he may never be the same. If this theory holds any truth, then Johnny might no longer need to worry about being the only mortal in a family of immortals. That temporary transformation into a monster could have done more than just give him powers. It might have given him a hidden gift, the ability to live forever alongside his vampire wife and their supernatural family. And with that, the narrative flips. Instead of being destined to grow old and die while everyone else remains unchanged, Johnny might now be closer to the monsters than anyone realizes. Now that this idea is on the table, that Johnny could have unknowingly become immortal, it's worth asking, did the film leave any clues? Are there small, subtle signs that Johnny is no longer just an ordinary human? Let's start with his appearance. Throughout the series, Johnny hardly seems to age, even though time clearly passes. His son Dennis grows older, his behavior matures, and we see signs of progression in other characters. But Johnny? He looks and acts just like he did in the beginning. Sure, animation doesn't always reflect aging accurately, especially in comedies, but this might not be just a stylistic choice. It could be an intentional hint that something about Johnny has changed. Then there's his seemingly endless energy. He's always upbeat, tireless, bouncing from one moment to the next with unstoppable enthusiasm. While that's definitely part of his character's charm, it's also worth questioning. What if that boundless energy is more than personality? What if it's a symptom of a new supernatural stamina, a lingering trace of his time as a monster, giving him resistance to fatigue, stress, or even the minor physical ailments that come with being human? If Johnny has quietly crossed the line into something not quite human, not entirely monster either, but somewhere in between, that changes everything. It redefines his role in the family and sets up a future where he may never need to say goodbye. Think about this for a second. Even when Johnny finds himself in dangerous situations at the hotel, which happens pretty often, considering he lives surrounded by monsters and chaos, he never seems to be seriously hurt. He constantly walks away from accidents, attacks, and magical mishaps that would leave any normal human bruised, broken, or worse. Sure, that could be chalked up to cartoon logic or plot convenience. But what if it's not? What if this invulnerability is a sign that Johnny has developed a monster-like resilience, the kind that comes with immortality? While Johnny continues living his life as if nothing has changed, these small moments might be hinting at something much bigger. He might already be more like his monster family than he ever realized. And if this theory is correct, if Johnny really did become immortal without knowing it, that opens the door to some major implications for the future of the franchise. Let's start with Mavis. Her biggest fear from the very beginning was the idea of losing Johnny to time. As a vampire, she would live on for centuries, while the man she loved would grow old and eventually pass away. That fear shaped much of her emotional journey. But now, if Johnny is no longer bound by human limitations, everything changes. What once felt like an impossible dream, spending eternity together, suddenly becomes a real possibility. And then there's Dracula. His relationship with Johnny has always been complicated. At first, he saw Johnny as a clueless outsider, an unpredictable human who somehow ended up marrying his daughter. Over time, though, Drac came to accept him as family. But imagine how he'd react if he discovered that Johnny, by some twist of fate, had become immortal. On one hand, it would be a relief. Mavis wouldn't have to lose the love of her life. On the other, it might spark a new concern. Is this guy really going to be part of my life forever, and still causing chaos? In a world built on magic, transformations, and unpredictable spells, Johnny's accidental immortality wouldn't just change his story. It could reshape the entire dynamic of the monster family moving forward. Another major twist could come from Johnny discovering his immortality in the most unexpected way. Maybe it happens during a life-threatening situation, one where he should be seriously injured, but walks away without a scratch. Or perhaps he starts to notice something strange over time. While everyone around him changes, he remains exactly the same. No wrinkles, no signs of aging, no decline in energy. That sudden realization could hit hard. The moment he understands that he, the most carefree and easygoing person in the group, might now be immortal, living forever alongside monsters. This revelation would have a ripple effect on his life and on the family dynamic. Johnny, who never really planned for anything beyond the next adventure, would be forced to confront the weight of eternity. And that opens up fascinating new possibilities for the franchise. For one, it could introduce fresh storylines centered around his transformation. Maybe other creatures, beings from the monster world or beyond, see Johnny's accidental immortality as unnatural, even dangerous. He's no longer a regular human, but he also wasn't born a monster. That puts him in a gray area, one that might attract unwanted attention or powerful enemies. His existence could be seen as a threat, triggering conflicts that take the series in a new direction, darker, but still grounded in its magical universe. Still, for all its potential, this theory has weaknesses. First, Johnny's transformation in Transylvania is clearly presented as temporary. The entire premise of the monsterification ray is that its effects can be reversed, and they are. By the end of the film, Johnny is restored to his original human form, with no visible evidence of lasting changes. If something as significant as immortality had remained, it's likely the story would have acknowledged it in some way. But the movie treats the reversal as complete, without leaving obvious hints of lingering consequences. Another important point is the tone of the Hotel Transylvania series itself. These films have always leaned toward comedy, fast-paced adventure, and light-hearted themes. While the idea of immortality brings interesting emotional depth, it introduces a level of seriousness that might not align with the tone the franchise has consistently maintained. The concept of aging, loss, or existential changes has never been a major focus of the narrative. And finally, there's the matter of style. Johnny's youthful appearance and non-stop energy could easily be explained by animation logic. In many animated franchises, characters retain the same look even as time moves forward. It's a visual choice, not a story clue. The fact that Johnny doesn't seem to age might not be a sign of immortality at all, but simply the consistent design choice used to maintain the character's identity across multiple films. So while the idea of Johnny unknowingly gaining immortality is compelling and full of creative possibilities, the current tone and storytelling approach of the series suggests that this might be more fan theory than canon. At least for now. Now, another key figure comes into play, Erica Van Helsing, Dracula's girlfriend and notably a mortal human. Her presence in the story raises an important question. If Erica is in a long-term relationship with an immortal vampire, will the franchise eventually address the issue of her mortality alongside Johnny's? So far, Hotel Transylvania hasn't provided any concrete answers regarding the long-term fate of either Erica or Johnny in terms of immortality. If the series chooses to make both of them vampires, that decision could mark the beginning of a new chapter. However, it might also stir controversy. For some fans, turning them into immortals might feel like an easy fix, a shortcut that avoids dealing with the emotional weight of their human limitations. After all, part of what makes their relationships compelling is the tension between their human lives and the timeless existence of their monster partners. Johnny is the energetic, clueless human constantly trying to fit into a world that doesn't follow his rules. Erica, even with her Van Helsing lineage, is just as mortal and vulnerable. Giving them eternal life might erase the contrast that defines their roles, and in doing so, flatten some of the emotional and narrative tension that makes their presence valuable in the story. There's also the broader issue. The franchise has never truly explored what immortality means within its universe. It's played mostly for laughs or romantic stakes, but the real implications, the psychological, social, or existential weight of living forever, have been largely avoided. Would Johnny and Erica even want to be immortal? Would they be ready to leave behind the human experience in exchange for eternal life among monsters? Or would that decision open the door to complications and internal conflict that the series has never shown interest in tackling? On the flip side, keeping them human brings its own set of problems. If the films continue, time eventually has to catch up with Johnny and Erica. The longer the story stretches on, the more noticeable their aging or mortality could become, and addressing that in a comedic, family-friendly tone would be a significant creative challenge. That may be why the films have avoided this topic altogether. It's a thread left dangling, possibly by design. Still, the longer the franchise continues, the harder it becomes to ignore. Sooner or later, the creators might have to confront this question directly. If they choose to grant Johnny and Erica immortality, it would solve the practical problem of keeping them around, but at the cost of diluting the human-monster dynamic that made them unique. On the other hand, letting them age and eventually exit the story introduces emotional weight that clashes with the tone the franchise has always maintained. Ultimately, Hotel Transylvania hasn't taken a clear stance, and that ambiguity leaves the door open for speculation. Whatever path the creators choose, the decision surrounding Johnny and Erica's mortality will likely become a defining moment in the series, and a source of debate among fans who care deeply about how these relationships evolve. So what do you think? Could Johnny already be immortal without even knowing it? And how should the franchise handle Erica's future? There's still a lot of mystery in the Hotel Transylvania universe, and maybe that's exactly what keeps it so fun to explore. If you enjoyed diving into this theory, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And hey, before you go, click the video on the screen right now for another deep dive into the world of your favorite characters. You won't want to miss it.